Captain Day 1 stood in the diplomatic reception hall and tried not to show his nervousness. The room was enormous, built to accommodate species of all sizes. Through the transparent dome above, he could see the stars and the distant curve of the neutral planet below. This was supposed to be a simple meeting. First contact with the Vrelian Empire. Handshakes, introductions, maybe some awkward cultural exchanges. Nothing dangerous. He looked at his crew. Hannah stood near the entrance, her tactical officer uniform crisp and proper. She was scanning the room with those sharp eyes of hers, always alert. Tamin, their medical specialist, was reviewing his datapad, probably reading about Vrelian biology for the 100th time. Yuna, their communications expert, was practicing Vrelian phrases under her breath. She looked excited and terrified at the same time. The doors opened with a heavy sound. The Vrelians entered. Day 1 had seen pictures, but pictures did not prepare him for the reality. They were massive. Merely 8 feet tall, their bodies covered in crystalline formations that looked like armor and skin combined. They moved with precision, every step deliberate. Their eyes glowed with a faint blue light. Commander Velther led them, his crystal formations darker than the others, marking his rank. Behind him walked War Master Krelax, who carried himself like violence waiting to happen. The introductions went smoothly at first. Velther's voice was surprisingly soft, translated through their devices into Korean. They exchanged formal greetings. Day 1 presented a gift from Earth, a simple stone from the Korean mountains. Velther seemed pleased, though it was hard to read expressions on a crystalline face. Then came the cultural exchange portion. Yuna stepped forward. She had studied so hard for this moment. She raised her hands in what the database said was a Vrelian gesture of respect. Fingers spread wide, palms facing forward. The room went silent. Completely silent. Velther's glow intensified. The other Vrelians stepped back. Krelax's hand moved to his weapon. "What did I do?" Yuna whispered, her voice shaking. Tamin was frantically checking his datapad. The gesture. The database was wrong. That's not a greeting. That's a challenge. A death challenge. Everything happened too fast and too slow at the same time. Krelax drew his weapon. It was sleek and dangerous, a Railbolt launcher that could punch through starship hulls. He was not aiming at Yuna, though. He was aiming at Hana, who stood closest to her. In Vrelian culture, apparently, you answered a challenge by striking the challenger's protector first. "No!" the one shouted, but his voice seemed to take forever to leave his throat. The Railbolt fired. The sound was like thunder in the enclosed space. A tungsten projectile, accelerated to hypersonic speeds, screaming through the air toward Hana's chest. At that velocity, it would tear through her body armor like paper. It would kill her instantly. Hana turned slightly. Just slightly. Her hand moved. The Railbolt stopped. She held it between 2 fingers, pinched delicately like someone catching a piece of paper blown by the wind. She looked at it with mild curiosity, turning it slightly to examine the craftsmanship. Then she tossed it back to Krelax's underhand, the way you might return a pen someone dropped. The Railbolt clattered on the floor at Krelax's feet. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Krelax stared at the Railbolt, then at his weapon, then at Hana, then at the Railbolt again. His crystalline structure was flickering with colors Day 1 had never seen in the database. Confusion? Fear? Velther spoke first, his soft voice now sharp. "What augmentation do you possess?" Hana blinked. "Augmentation? I don't have any augmentation, sir." "Impossible. No biological being can track a Railbolt. No being can withstand the force of catching one. What technology are you using?" Day 1 found his voice. "Commander Velther, I assure you, Officer Hana is not augmented." That was standard human reflex capability. The Vrelians looked at each other. Krelax picked up his Railbolt and examined it, perhaps checking if it had malfunctioned. It had not. Standard human capability, Melther repeated slowly. You expect us to believe that any human could do this? Hannah shrugged. Well, not any human. I played sports in university. But most people with decent reflexes could probably manage it if they saw it coming. This seemed to disturb the Vrelians even more. Tamin, always helpful, decided to explain. Humans evolved on a high-gravity world. Earth's gravity is approximately 9.8 meters per second squared, which is substantially higher than most spacefaring civilizations. This means our muscle density and reaction speeds evolved to handle significantly more force and stimulus. Additionally, our atmosphere has higher oxygen content, which supports more efficient energy conversion in our cells. The result is that what seems extraordinary to you is simply normal for us. Velther was quiet for a long moment. You are saying that all humans can do this? Catch railbolts? Not all of us, no, Day One said carefully. But physical capabilities similar to what you just saw. Yes, that's normal for our species. Krelax spoke for the first time since firing. His voice was rough, like stones grinding together. In 3,000 years of Vrelian military history, no species has ever demonstrated superiority over our weapons in this manner. No species has ever caught our fire and returned it. I was not trying to demonstrate superiority, Hannah said quietly. I was trying not to die. I apologize if I caused offense. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut. Day One could see Una shaking, probably terrified that her mistake had started an interstellar incident. Taemin was pale, his datapad forgotten in his hands. Velther finally moved. He approached Hannah slowly. She stood her ground, though Day One noticed her weight had shifted slightly, ready for action. The Vrelian commander stopped a respectful distance away. You caught death in your hand and treated it as an inconvenience, Velther said. This demands explanation. This demands understanding. He turned to Day One. Captain, I request permission to study your crew, to understand this capability. If what you say is true, if this is standard for your species, then we have gravely misunderstood humanity's place in the galaxy. Day One looked at his crew. Hannah gave a small nod. Taemin looked intrigued, despite his fear. Una still looked like she might cry, but she straightened her shoulders and nodded too. We would be happy to help you understand, Day One said. Though I think you will find we are less impressive than this moment suggests. We are just people, Commander. We simply come from a world that demanded we be strong to survive. Velther's glow shifted to something that might have been respect. Perhaps. Or perhaps you are so accustomed to your strength that you no longer recognize it as extraordinary. Either way, the Vrelian Empire wishes to learn the truth about humanity. With your permission, we will begin immediately. Day One agreed. He had no idea that this moment, this single caught railbolt, would change everything the galaxy thought about humanity. He had no idea that word would spread, that fear and respect would ripple through the stars, that his crew would become famous across countless worlds. All he knew was that Hannah had saved her own life with reflexes she considered ordinary. And now the Vrelians wanted to know how many other impossible things humans thought were normal. The answer, as they would discover, was quite a lot. Asterisk, the Vrelian warship was called the Eternal Blade, and it was the most intimidating thing Day One had ever seen. It hung in space like a crystalline weapon, all sharp angles and glowing energy fields. Velther had invited the human crew aboard to continue their cultural exchange. Day One suspected it was more like an investigation. Hannah walked beside him through the corridors. Everything was scaled for beings much larger than humans. The ceilings were high, the doorways wide. Other Vrelians stopped to stare at them as they passed. Word had spread about what happened in the reception hall. "They are looking at you like you are a ghost," Taemin whispered to Hana. "I feel like one," she replied. "I just caught a piece of metal. Why is everyone acting like I performed a miracle?" Velther led them to what he called the war chamber. It was a vast room filled with weapons, training equipment, and holographic displays. A dozen Vrelian warriors stood at attention. Kralax was among them, his expression unreadable. "We have reviewed every recorded encounter with humans in our database," Velther began. "There are anomalies we previously attributed to sensor errors or exaggerated reports. Humans dodging weapons fire, surviving injuries that should be fatal, moving with speeds our targeting systems struggle to track. We dismissed these as impossible. We were wrong." He activated a holographic display. Video footage began playing. Humans in various situations. A human construction worker lifting a beam that the caption said weighed 300 kilograms. A human emergency responder working for 36 hours straight during a station disaster. A human security officer disarming an armed criminal with movements too fast for the camera to capture clearly. "These are all from civilian records," Velther said. "Not your military. Not your warriors. Ordinary humans performing what we would consider extraordinary feats." Yuna stepped forward. She had prepared for this, studied what questions the Vrelians might ask. "Commander, may I explain the science behind what you are seeing?" Velther gestured for her to continue. "Earth, our homeworld, has a gravity measurement of 1.0 on the standard scale. But that scale was created by species from lower gravity worlds. What you call 1.0, we experience as normal. What you experience as normal is about 0.4 by our measurement. This means everything we do requires nearly triple the force you use." She pulled up her own holographic display, showing Earth rotating in space. "Our planet is also violent by galactic standards. Weather patterns that can level cities, earthquakes, volcanoes, temperature ranges from far below freezing to temperatures that would kill most species. And our atmosphere has an oxygen content of about 21%. For most species, this is mildly toxic over extended periods." A Vrelian scientist stepped forward. "You are saying your world is hostile to life?" Taemin answered this time. "No, it is hostile to most galactic life. To us, it is home. We evolved there. Our bodies adapted to survive there. High gravity gave us dense bones and powerful muscles. The oxygen gave us efficient energy conversion. The dangers gave us fast reflexes and strong healing capabilities. We did not know this made us unusual until we met other species." Kralax spoke, his voice skeptical. "If what you say is true, then demonstrate. Show us these capabilities are not unique to Officer Hana." Day one nodded. "We would be happy to." Over the next 3 hours, the Vrelians tested the human crew. They started simple. They asked Ji-Woo, their engineer, to lift various weights. Ji-Woo was small for a human, barely 170 centimeters tall and lean. He lifted equipment that made the Vrelians' crystalline structures flicker with disbelief. A crate that required 2 Vrelians to move, Ji-Woo picked up with a grunt and carried across the room. "This feels heavier than it should," Ji-Woo complained. "How long have I been in low gravity? I am getting weak." The Vrelians had no response to that. They tested Subin next, their medical specialist. They asked her to run on their training equipment, a treadmill that could be set to various speeds and inclines. The Vrelian record for sustained running was 43 minutes. Subin ran for 2 hours before Taemin made her stop, worried about her hydration levels in the ship's dry atmosphere. "You do not seem tired," the Vrelian scientist observed. Subin shrugged. "I am tired, but I can keep going. In medical training, we sometimes work 30-hour shifts, You learn to push through tired. 30 hours? Impossible. The biological need for rest would. We rest when we can, Subin interrupted gently. But when people need help, we keep working. It is just what you do. They tested reflexes next. They had a machine that fired soft projectiles at increasing speeds, testing reaction time and hand-eye coordination. The Vrelian record was catching 15 projectiles before missing. They asked Yuna to try, since she was their communications expert and probably the least physically trained. Yuna caught all 25. She missed the 26th only because she was not paying attention, distracted by a question from one of the observers. "Sorry," she said. "Could you repeat that?" "I was not focused." The Vrelian operating the machine just stared at her. Finally, they asked Hana to demonstrate combat capability. Krelax volunteered to spar with her. They used training weapons, non-lethal, but still capable of delivering painful strikes. The Vrelian warriors gathered to watch. This was what they understood: combat, skill against skill. The match lasted 43 seconds. Hana moved like water, flowing around Krelax's strikes. He was faster than she expected, his crystalline body surprisingly agile. But she was faster. When he swung, she was not there. When he blocked, she had already changed angles. She swept his legs, used his momentum against him, and put him on the ground with a training blade at his throat before he fully understood what had happened. Silence filled the war chamber. Krelax stood slowly. For a moment, Day One thought the Vrelian warrior might be angry. Then Krelax did something unexpected. He bowed. A full, formal Vrelian bow that showed deep respect. "You defeated me using techniques I did not recognize," Krelax said. Hana returned the bow. Basic police academy training from Earth. 3 months of hand-to-hand combat instruction. I'm not even very good at it. There are humans who train their entire lives in combat arts. They would make me look clumsy. This statement seemed to disturb the Vrelians more than anything else they had seen. Velther turned to Day One. His glow had changed to something complex, multiple colors shifting through his crystalline structure. "Captain Day One, I must ask you a question, and I need you to answer with complete honesty." "Of course." "Commander, if these are your civilians, your engineers and medical staff and communications experts, what are your actual warriors like? What are your soldiers capable of?" Day One looked at his crew. Hana still catching her breath from the sparring match. Ji Woo stretching his arms after the lifting demonstration. Su Bin drinking water and looking completely unbothered by her 2-hour run. Yuna reviewing the reflex test results with scientific curiosity. "Commander Velther, you just met them. In humanity, we do not separate our society into warrior and civilian castes. Everyone receives basic survival training. Everyone learns to fight, to endure, to survive. We come from a world that demands this. A world where a storm can kill you, where wildlife can kill you, where the environment itself can kill you if you are not prepared. So we prepare our children. We teach them to be strong, to be resilient, to protect themselves and others." He paused, making sure Velther understood. These 4 people are not warriors. They are scientists and specialists who happen to be human, which means they happen to be capable of surviving Earth. That is all. Velther was quiet for a long time. The other Vrelians whispered among themselves in their native language, too fast for the translators to keep up. Finally, Velther spoke. "We have been a spacefaring civilization for 3,000 years. We have met hundreds of species. We pride ourselves on our military strength, our warrior culture, our combat superiority. And now we discover that a species we viewed as new and untested, a species we thought we understood, has been restraining themselves this entire time. Not from fear, not from weakness, but because you genuinely did not realize you were exceptional. We are not exceptional, Hana said quietly. We are just human. This is normal for us. That, Velther replied, is exactly what makes you exceptional. The message reached the Galactic Council within 2 days. The video footage, the test results, the documented evidence of human capabilities. By the end of the week, every major civilization had seen Hana catch the Railbolt. The galaxy was talking about humanity, and not everyone was happy about it. The Dewan sat in his quarters on the diplomatic station, reading the news feeds. Some species were fascinated. Others were terrified. A few were angry, claiming humanity had hidden their true nature deliberately. The council had called an emergency session. We are being summoned, Yuna said, entering his quarters without knocking. They had moved past formal protocols days ago. The council wants answers. They want us to explain ourselves. Explain what? That we exist? Day one felt tired. We never hid anything. We never lied. We just lived our lives. They do not see it that way. They see a potential threat. A species physically superior to most of the galaxy, suddenly revealed to be much more dangerous than anyone thought. Hana appeared in the doorway behind Yuna. The Vrelians are on our side, at least. Velther is speaking in our defense. He told the council that humanity has had opportunities to demonstrate aggression and has chosen peace every time. That may not be enough, Taemin said, joining them. I have been reading the history files. There are protocols. Old protocols about what the council calls death world species. Species from high gravity, high danger worlds. The protocols recommend isolation and quarantine. Day one stood. Then we go to the council and we tell them the truth. We tell them who we are and what we want. And we let them decide. The council chamber was enormous, designed to accommodate representatives from dozens of species. The Sath, reptilian bureaucrats who ran most of the administrative functions, sat in heated seats. The Luminae, beings of pure energy contained in special vessels, floated in their designated area. The Kolvathi, an insectoid collective consciousness, occupied a whole section with hundreds of small bodies acting as one mind. And there were the Vrelians. Velther stood at the speaker's platform, his crystalline body glowing with intensity as he addressed the council. For 3,000 years, the Vrelian empires measured ourselves by our military strength, Velther was saying. We believed ourselves the greatest warriors in the galaxy. Then we met humanity. In one moment, one simple moment, a human officer demonstrated capabilities that surpass our finest warriors. We could have taken this as an insult, as a threat. Instead, we chose to understand. He gestured to the viewing screens where footage of the demonstrations played. What you see is not the result of military breeding or genetic modification. This is natural human capability, evolved on a world the Council's own classification system rates as a Class 9 death world. Earth is more dangerous than any homeworld in recorded galactic history. And humanity did not just survive there. They thrived. A Sath representative raised her hand. Commander Velther, your testimony is noted. However, the Council must consider the broader implications. A species with such capabilities represents an unknown variable, a potential danger. Danger? Velther's glow intensified. Humanity has been part of galactic civilization for 300 years. In that time, how many wars have they started? 0. How many territorial disputes have they initiated? 0. How many times have they used their superior strength to dominate or conquer? 0. Another representative spoke up. This one from a species Day One did not recognize. They may have been waiting, building strength, planning, or, a Luminae voice chimed, musical and ethereal. They are exactly what they appear to be. A peaceful species that happens to be strong. The Sci historian pulled up data on her screen. I have reviewed the archives. There are mentions of Deathworld species in our oldest records. The theoretical dangers they pose. Their potential for violence. Theoretical, the Luminae emphasized. There are no actual records of Deathworld species becoming aggressive. Because we have never encountered one before. We are operating on fear, not fact. The debate continued for hours. Day One and his crew sat in the designated area for witnesses, listening to species argue about their fate. Some defended humanity. Others called for restrictions on human expansion, limits on their population, monitoring of their activities. Finally, the council speaker called for order. We will hear from the humans themselves. Captain Day One, please approach. Day One walked to the speaker's platform. The eyes, sensors, and consciousness of dozens of species focused on him. He felt small, insignificant, but he also felt angry. Not the hot anger that leads to violence, but the cold anger that comes from being judged unfairly. Members of the council, he began. My crew and I came to space with hope. We came hoping to find friends among the stars. We came hoping to learn, to share, to be part of something bigger than ourselves. He looked around the chamber. We never hid what we are. We never lied. We answered every question honestly. We shared our technology, our culture, our knowledge freely. When other species needed help, we gave it. When disasters struck, we sent aid. We have been good neighbors, good partners, good friends. His voice grew stronger. And now you debate whether to quarantine us because you are afraid. Afraid of what? That we might be strong? We are strong. Earth made us strong because Earth is hard. But strength is not the same as violence. Capability is not the same as intent. The chamber was silent. You want to know what humanity wants? We want what we have always wanted. Community. Connection. A place among the stars where we belong. We want to build hospitals and schools and parks. We want to raise our children in peace. We want to learn from you and teach you what we know. We want to be friends. He paused, letting his words settle. If you fear us too much for that, if you cannot trust us despite 300 years of peaceful coexistence, then we will respect your decision. We will limit our expansion. We will accept monitoring. We will do whatever it takes to earn your trust. Because that is what friends do. They compromise. They sacrifice. They prove themselves through actions, not words. Day One returned to his seat. Hannah squeezed his shoulder in support. The council debated for 3 more hours. They reviewed records. They examined evidence. They argued about precedent and protocol and risk management. Finally, they called for a vote. The results appeared on the main screen. In favor of full membership without restrictions, 43 species. In favor of membership with monitoring, 37 species. In favor of quarantine, 12 species. Humanity had won. Barely. The speaker announced the decision formally. The Galactic Council grants humanity full membership status, with the provision that human activities be monitored for a probationary period of 50 standard years. Furthermore, humanity is invited to participate in all council functions and will receive the same rights and protections as any member species. Relief flooded through Day One. Beside him, Yuna was crying. Taemin looked stunned. Hana's face showed no expression, but her hands were shaking slightly. After the session ended, Velther approached them. Congratulations, Captain. Though I wish the vote had been more decisive. 43 species trusted us, Day One replied. That is more than I hoped for. 37 more would have trusted you if they had spent time with you as I have. Fear is powerful, but so is truth. Velther's glow shifted to something warm. The Vrelian Empire formally requests a joint venture with humanity. We wish to establish exchange programs, shared military training, cultural education. We believe both our species have much to learn from each other. Day One smiled. We would be honored. As they left the council chamber, Hannah spoke quietly. This is just the beginning, is it not? We proved we are not a threat. Now we have to prove we are valuable. No, Day One corrected her. We just have to keep being ourselves. The galaxy will figure out our value on their own. Behind them, the council chamber emptied slowly. Representatives from different species talked in small groups. Some discussed humanity with suspicion, others with curiosity, a few with genuine warmth. The galaxy had changed today. Humanity was no longer the new species, the unknown quantity. They were members, full members, with all the rights and responsibilities that entailed. And somewhere on Earth, billions of humans continued their ordinary lives, unaware that they had just been classified as extraordinary by the rest of the universe. They woke up, went to work, raised their families, and lived in a gravity that would crush most galactic species. They breathed an atmosphere that was mildly toxic to others. They survived on a world that the galaxy called a death trap, and they called it home. 1 year passed. The galaxy adjusted to humanity's presence. The probationary monitoring became routine. Human ships traveled freely through council space. Human engineers worked on alien stations. Human doctors treated patients from a dozen different species. And slowly, the fear faded, replaced by something close to normal acceptance. The Horizon's promise now led a joint exploration fleet. The Day One commanded 15 ships representing 10 different species. Hannah served as his second in command, her reputation having spread far beyond that first incident with the Railbolt. The crew had expanded to include Vrelians, Sath, Luminae, and others. They worked together, learned from each other, and slowly became more than just colleagues. They became friends. Ji Wu had taken 3 Sath engineers under his guidance. They followed him around constantly, amazed by his ability to work with heavy equipment without mechanical assistance. Su Bin ran the medical bay with a Luminae assistant who still could not understand how she worked 30-hour shifts without stimulants. Yuna taught communication protocols to a young Vrelian who was fascinated by human language patterns. It was a good year, a peaceful year. Then the distress call came. "Captain," Yuna said, her voice tight with stress. "We are receiving an emergency broadcast from the frontier Mayan colony on Helios 7. They are under attack." Day One was on the bridge immediately. Details? Unknown hostile species. Not in any database. They appeared 6 hours ago and began attacking without warning or communication attempts. 3 civilian evacuation ships are pinned down on the surface. Casualties are mounting. Velther, commanding the Vrelian ship in their fleet, appeared on the communication screen. "Captain, we are closest to their position. The council will not arrive for at least 20 hours. Those civilians will be dead long before then." "Then we go now," Day One said. "All ships, maximum speed to Helios 7. Battle protocols." The human crew members moved with practiced efficiency, but something changed in them. The alien crew members noticed it immediately. The humans became quieter, more focused. They stopped smiling. "Anna," a young Sath named Kesh said nervously, "you are frightening me." "What is wrong?" Hannah was checking her weapons, her movements methodical and precise. "Nothing is wrong, Kesh. We have a job to do. But you look different. You all look different." Hannah paused and looked at the Sath. Her expression softened slightly. "We are preparing for combat. Real combat, not training exercises. This is what humans look like when we are getting ready to fight. Should I be afraid?" "No. You should stay on the ship where it is safe." This is not your fight. It is not your fight either, Kesh protested. You are explorers, not soldiers. Hannah smiled, but it was not a happy smile. We are humans, Kesh. That means we are whatever we need to be. The fleet arrived at Helios 7 to find chaos. The unknown hostiles, which they designated as Ravagers, were silicon-based life forms that moved in perfect coordination. A hive mind. They had surrounded 3 evacuation ships, keeping them grounded with sustained weapons fire. Bodies lay scattered across the landing zone. Mostly civilians. Mostly dead. Scan shows approximately 1,000 hostile entities, Una reported. They have superior numbers and defensive positions. The A1s studied the tactical display. The math was simple and brutal. They did not have enough personnel to mount a conventional rescue. The Ravagers would overwhelm any force they sent, unless that force was human. How many humans do we have across the fleet? Day 1 asked. 20, including us, Hannah replied. She already knew what he was thinking. 20 against 1,000. Velther's voice came over the comm. Captain, that is suicide. No, Day 1 said calmly. That is acceptable odds. Hannah, assemble all human personnel. Combat gear. We are going down. The alien crew members watched in confusion as the humans prepared. They had seen the humans exercise, seen them train. But this was different. The humans put on armor that looked too heavy to move in. They picked up weapons that the aliens needed mechanical assistance to lift. They checked and rechecked their equipment with a thoroughness that suggested they expected to need everything. Minho, who usually worked in security but had been trained as a soldier, handed out ammunition. 20 hours, he said to the other humans. We need to hold for 20 hours until Council forces arrive. That is a long time. Then we make every minute count, Jiwoo replied, checking his weapon. He was an engineer. He had never expected to see real combat. But he loaded his rifle with steady hands. Su Bin was preparing her medical equipment. She would be going down with them, setting up a field hospital. A Lumine assistant was vibrating with distress. You cannot survive this. The numbers are impossible. Probably, Su Bin agreed. But those civilians definitely cannot survive if we do nothing. So we do something. The dropship carried all 20 humans down to the surface. They landed 2 kilometers from the evacuation ships, outside the Ravager's sensor range. The plan was simple. Fight their way to the civilians. Establish a defensive perimeter. Hold until relief arrived. Simple, not easy. They moved through the alien landscape in tactical formation. The Ravagers detected them within 10 minutes. The first wave came fast. 50 hostiles rushing their position with no regard for casualties. They were testing, probing for weakness. They found none. The humans opened fire with controlled bursts. Every shot counted. Every shot hit. The Ravagers fell, but more kept coming. They were learning, adapting, changing their approach with each failed assault. They are smart, Hannah observed, dropping 3 hostiles with 3 shots. They learn from mistakes. So do we, Minho replied, throwing a grenade that scattered a cluster of Ravagers. Keep moving. Do not let them pin us down. They fought for 6 hours straight to reach the evacuation ships. 6 hours of constant combat. The Ravagers threw wave after wave at them. The humans kept advancing, their training and physical capabilities giving them an edge that the Ravagers had not anticipated. When they reached the civilian ships, they found terrified aliens from multiple species huddled inside. The civilians stared at the humans in their battle armor, covered in dust and alien blood, and did not know whether to be relieved or more frightened. We are here to protect you, Day 1 announced. Stay inside the ships. Do not come out for any reason. We will hold them off. Jiwoo and his team immediately began constructing defensive fortifications. They worked at a pace that seemed impossible, moving materials that should have required machinery, building barriers in minutes instead of hours. The Ravagers tried to stop them. Jiwoo kept working, even when a hostile got close enough to slash his arm. He killed it with his sidearm and continued building. Su-bin set up her medical station inside one of the evacuation ships. Within an hour, she was treating wounded civilians while coordinating the defense through her comlink. When the Ravagers breached the outer perimeter, she stepped out, shot 3 of them with calm precision, and went back to surgery. The Ravagers adapted their tactics. They stopped rushing blindly and started using coordinated strikes, trying to overwhelm specific positions. They targeted what they thought were weak points. They were wrong. There were no weak points. Every human was equally capable, equally dangerous. Minho held a choke point for 4 hours straight. 4 hours of continuous combat. His armor took dozens of hits. He took 2 serious wounds. He kept fighting. When a Ravager managed to damage his primary weapon, he switched to his sidearm. When that ran low on ammunition, he used his knife. When his left arm was too damaged to function properly, he kept fighting with his right. Yuna coordinated the defense while simultaneously hacking into Ravager communications. She broke their encryption in 3 hours, identified their command structure, and started feeding targeting data to the other humans, all while firing her own weapon at anything that got too close. Above them, in orbit, Velther watched through the surveillance feeds. He had seen combat. He had led Vrelian warriors in battle. But he had never seen anything like this. 20 humans fighting 1,000 hostiles. Not just fighting, winning. How are they doing this? His second asked. They are not doing anything, Velther replied quietly. They are simply being human. This is what they are. This is what their world made them. Hour 12. The humans were tiring. Even their enhanced endurance had limits. But the Ravagers had learned to fear them. The hive mind had calculated the cost of each assault and found it unacceptable. They pulled back, trying to starve the humans out. That was a mistake. The break gave the humans time to resupply, treat their wounded, and prepare better defenses. When the Ravagers attacked again at hour 15, they found the humans ready and waiting. Hour 18. A Ravager breakthrough threatened to overrun Su-bin's medical station. Hana was there in seconds, her movements too fast for the Ravagers to track. She killed 12 hostiles in under a minute, protecting the wounded civilians with a ferocity that made even the other humans nervous. Hour 20. The Council fleet arrived. They found the 20 humans still standing, still fighting, surrounded by the bodies of hundreds of Ravagers. All 3 evacuation ships intact. All civilians safe. 7 humans wounded, none dead. The Ravager hive mind calculated one final time and decided retreat was the only option. They withdrew, abandoning the planet to the humans who had proven too costly to defeat. Day 1 stood in the mid. The medical bay of the Horizon's Promise was full. Su-bin moved between patients, treating her own wounded crew while simultaneously caring for the injured civilians they had rescued. A Lumine assistant, who had been terrified before the battle, now watched her with something close to worship. "You were shot," the Lumine said. "I saw the wound. How are you still working?" Su-bin glanced at her bandaged side. "It hurts. But these people need help more than I need rest. I will sleep when everyone is stable. You have been awake for 36 hours. Yes, and I will probably be awake for another 12 before this is done. That is the job." She moved to the next patient, a young Sath who had been caught in the crossfire. The child was crying, calling for their parent. Su-bin held their hand while she worked, speaking softly in their language. She had learned it during the voyage. Just in case. On the bridge, Day One was giving his report to the council. The main screen showed dozens of faces from different species, all listening intently. "The Ravagers have withdrawn from the system," Day One said. "We believe their hive mind calculated that further engagement was not worth the losses. They may return with greater numbers, so I recommend establishing a permanent defense station on Helia 7. The Sath counselor spoke first. "Captain Day One, your report indicates that 20 human personnel held off approximately 1,000 hostile entities for 18 hours with 0 fatalities. Is this accurate?" "Yes, counselor. How is that possible?" Day One was quiet for a moment. "Because we had to. Because there were civilians who needed protection. Because retreat was not an option." Illuminae counselor chimed in. "The civilians you saved included representatives from 7 different species. 63 individuals in total. They all report that your crew risked their lives repeatedly to protect them. Several state that humans took injuries while shielding them from enemy fire. That is correct. Why? You barely know these species. You had no obligation to risk so much." Day One looked directly at the camera. "Counselor, with respect, we had every obligation. They were people in danger. That is the only reason we needed." The council chambers went quiet. Then, to Day One's surprise, the Kovathi collective spoke. They rarely participated in council discussions, preferring to observe. "The human species continues to surprise us. We have observed your actions carefully over the past year. We have watched you work alongside species very different from yourselves. We have watched you teach, learn, and adapt. And now we have watched you fight to protect others at great personal cost." The Kovathi speaker continued. "The collective has debated long about humanity's nature. We now have our answer. You are not warriors pretending to be peaceful. You are peaceful beings who become warriors when necessary. This distinction is important." Velthar appeared on another screen. "The Vrelian Empire wishes to address the council. Speak, Commander Velthar. I have spent a year working alongside humans. I have trained with them, learned from them, and now fought beside them. I have seen them at their best and their worst. And I tell you this, the galaxy is safer because humanity exists. They do not seek power. They seek community. They do not seek conquest. They seek friendship. But when threatened, when others are endangered, they become something magnificent and terrifying." He paused, his crystalline structure glowing bright. "I recommend that the Galactic Council grant humanity protectorate status. Give them the authority to respond to emergencies across council space. They have proven they will not abuse this power. They have proven they will sacrifice themselves to protect others. The galaxy needs more species like them, not fewer." The debate that followed lasted 3 hours. Day One waited patiently, listening to species discuss humanity's future. Some were still afraid. Others were grateful. Most were simply confused, trying to reconcile the peaceful humans they had worked with for a year against the warriors who had just won an impossible battle. Finally, the vote was called. Humanity was granted protectorate status by an overwhelming majority. 73 species in favor, 8 against. The probationary period was ended early. Humanity was not just a member of the Galactic Council. They were recognized as defenders. When the council session ended, Day One found his crew in the common area. They looked exhausted. Minho's arm was in a sling. Ji Woo had bandages on his hands. Hannah moved stiffly, her ribs bruised from a close-range hit. But they were alive. They were together. And they had saved 63 lives. "We did it," Eunice said softly. "Full council membership. Protectorate status. We are officially important now." "We were always important," Taman replied. We just had to show them. Hana looked uncomfortable with all the attention their actions had brought. I do not understand why everyone is so surprised. We did what anyone would do. No, a voice said from the doorway. It was Kesh, the young Seth. You did what only humans would do. You faced impossible odds to save strangers. You fought when any other species would have retreated. You sacrificed your own safety for people you barely knew. That is not normal. That is extraordinary. It feels normal to us, Hana insisted. That is exactly what makes you extraordinary, Kesh replied. 6 months later, there was a ceremony on the Galactic Council station. The main chamber was packed with representatives from every member species. Humans from across their colonies and Earth itself attended, most of them confused about why they were being honored. Day One stood at the front with his crew. The council speaker, a dignified Limene, addressed the assembly. The Galactic Council recognizes humanity for exceptional service and sacrifice. The Battle of Helios 7 will be remembered as a defining moment in galactic history. 20 humans faced impossible odds and emerged victorious, not for glory or reward, but simply because it was the right thing to do. The speaker continued, Humanity teaches us that strength without compassion is meaningless. That capability without purpose is wasted. That power without responsibility is dangerous. They show us that true courage is not the absence of fear, but action despite fear. Awards were presented. Medals were given. Day One accepted them gracefully, though he insisted they belonged to all humanity, not just his crew. After the ceremony, there was a reception. Species from across the galaxy came to speak with the humans. Some wanted to thank them. Others wanted to understand them. A few wanted to work with them. Velther found Day One in a quiet corner, away from the crowds. You look uncomfortable with all this attention. I am, Day One admitted. We just did our jobs. You saved 63 lives while outnumbered 50 to 1. That is not just doing your job. That is heroism. Heroism. That One repeated the word like it tasted strange. We do not see ourselves as heroes, Commander. We see ourselves as people who helped other people. That is all. Velther's glow shifted to something warm and amused. A year ago, I fired a weapon at Officer Hana, expecting to kill her for an accidental insult. She caught my railbolt and returned it calmly, like I had dropped my keys. That moment changed everything I thought I knew about the galaxy. She still feels bad about that, you know? She thinks she embarrassed you. She humbled me, Velther corrected. And I needed it. My people needed it. We thought we were the greatest warriors in the galaxy. We were wrong. The greatest warriors are the ones who fight only when necessary and protect even their enemies. Across the room, Hana was surrounded by young Vrelians, all asking about combat techniques. She looked overwhelmed but patient, demonstrating a basic block and counter move for the 10th time. Ji Wu was explaining human engineering principles to a group of fascinated Korvathi. Su Bin had somehow ended up giving an impromptu medical lecture to 3 different species doctors. Yuna found Day One in his quiet corner. Captain, the council wants to know if we would be willing to lead a training program, teaching other species human survival techniques, combat methods, endurance training. What did you tell them? I said I would ask you, but I think we should do it. Not to make other species more like humans, but to help them understand us better. To bridge the gap between what they think we are and what we actually are. Day One considered this. What do you think we actually are, Yuna? She thought for a moment. We are people from a hard world who learned to be harder. We are survivors who became protectors. We are warriors who prefer peace. We are strong because we had to be, but gentle because we chose to be. That is a good answer. Is it true, though? I think so. I hope so. Krelax approached them, moving with the careful respect he had shown since losing the sparring match with Hana. Captain Day 1. I wanted to speak with you before you leave. Of course. War Master. I watched the recordings of Helia 7 many times. I studied every moment of the battle, and I finally understand what makes humans different. He paused, searching for the right words. You feel everything we feel. Pain, fear, exhaustion, doubt. But you do not let it stop you. You acknowledge it, and then you keep moving forward anyway. That is not physical strength. That is something else. Something we Vrelians have always valued but rarely achieved. What is that? Yuna asked. True courage. Later that night, after the reception ended and the crowds dispersed,